Welcome back to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast, where we're going to continue to share life experiences as we told you before. We want to welcome back for a part two, Vitelle. And if you didn't watch her first episode, we want to tell you back and watch the first one, and then you're going to get to watch this one too. We want to bring Vitelle. We're not going to get into it because we have a lot to talk about. We want to try to get as much time as we can in. Vitelle, if you could come up, tell us a little bit about yourself. And then, as you know, City Said is going to kick off that first question.
Hello, everybody. So good to be back on this podcast once again with the Unfiltered Unspoken who asked the tough questions, y'all. I'm so excited. My name is Vitelle. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an actress, model, entertainer, founder of Us Three Productions, which is an entertainment company who is tackling the tough topics with depression, suicide, homelessness, you name it. We are tackling the tough topics that people need to talk about using the arts and entertainment, such as books, movies, television, film, all of the things. So that's who I am. That's what I do. And once again, so glad to be back on this podcast. Let's get into it.
Well, thank you again for joining us again. So we did want to hop into some things that we left out or we weren't able to get to from your story last time. And we can start with your bout of homelessness and that kind of hole that led you down. So what were the circumstances that, led to you being unhoused?
So I've actually experienced homelessness multiple times throughout my life, and I talk about that in my book as well. And I remember being homeless as a child, but at that time, it didn't really resonate with me because I wasn't having to deal with the adult problems. I wasn't understanding what my mother was going through in that situation. It was just another fun adventure, another city to move to, another, whatever was going on in my childlike mind at that time. But as I became an adult and I experienced homelessness at that time, I can look back on those childhood memories and think like, wow, no wonder, my mom was probably stressed out a lot because it's a lot different from an adult's point of view. And I was actually homeless as an adult living with my then husband and two children in our car. And I remember just making it such an adventure and trying my best to keep my kids from experiencing the hard part of it, that just carrying that weight as the adult dealing with the things and making sure that for them it was just an adventure. So I experienced that as an adult multiple times. Actually, that was the I would say lowest point, I guess, was when we were in our car. But just going back and forth between, you get an apartment one minute and they're kicking you out because they got a mold issue, and then you get another apartment, and then, so it was back and forth periodically throughout my life that I experienced homelessness.
Okay. Sorry, y'all. I want to ask, so you said that you carried a lot of the weight. How did that feel as a mom with kids having to be forced to live in your car?
Definitely. There's so many words I could use to describe that. Humbling, really. It like everything that I go through in life, I look at it as a lesson and an experience that I always want to try to look at the bright side, try to see the silver lining, and try to see what can I learn from this situation and how can I grow from it. But it's not always easy, especially in that instance. I think the time that we lived in our car was probably, I want to guesstimate, around a year's span, but that can feel like a very long time when you're having to figure everything out day by day, one day at a time. So it seemed like a lot longer than a year when we were in it. And I remember we lived in Atlanta at first, but when it got cold in Atlanta, we had to make a decision to move further south. So we ended up in Miami during that time, just going to where the warmth was because, just living in the car, not having to think about air conditioning or heat and things like that. And so we ended up going to Miami. And again, I always saw the bright side of it, but I made sure that when it came to my kids, I was always like, okay, well, we're going to go live on the beach. Like, it wasn't like I didn't let them see that we didn't have a choice but to go live in Miami because we don't have heat. Like, we can't leave the car running all the time to keep it hot. And I just remember the feeling of being like when it would get cold at night and having to turn on the car to get the heat going for a minute, and we're all bundled up in jackets and blankets, and then you get warm and all of a sudden you're hot and you start sweating. Like, as soon as you doze off, you realize you're hot and sweaty, you turn the heat off, you unwrap a little bit, and then next thing you know, by the time you're dozing off again, you're getting cold again. So it was like that struggle just made it drag out. That was probably the worst part for me, was the not being able to control the temperature of the earth. And so, just adjusting to what life was giving me and moving on to Miami and trying to make the most out of what I had there, and exploring that city and seeing what opportunities there was, what job options, and what I could do to get myself back on my feet. And like I said, I was married at that time. So he had gotten multiple jobs when we went to Miami as well. So yeah, it was a struggle to protect the kids from experiencing the downside of it. But now that they're older and I'm able to look back and ask them about that, like, do you have any trauma from that? Do you have anything that you remember that was just like a bad experience? Like, they really don't even remember struggling at all. Like, they just feel like we was living on the beach, we was living our best life. I got them involved in different programs, school programs and things. They were homeschooling, so I got them involved with like the YMCA and stuff like that, where they were always interacting with other kids. It was always an adventure or a field trip or just something fun going on all the time. So although it was difficult for me, it was excitement for them. And that made it more comfortable for me, just knowing that they aren't hurting, they aren't wanting for anything, even though we're in the situation. They were never starving. They were never, without the bare necessities of life. And not to mention, I feel like they had their parents even more than they did when we were housed, because we were there together all the time, kind of trying to constantly come up with things to entertain ourselves, rather than everybody goes to your room and watches TV or gets on their own devices like most households right now. So it was pros and cons to those situations.
And as you can imagine, you said that you suffered, with your own internal struggles, depression, based on that experience, or just being around that experience. Tell us a little bit about that, and the ways you were able to even wallow at any time, or feel bad for yourself, being as though you are surrounded. You look to your left and right, people are here. You have to be strong for your kids. So in what ways were you able to, or what outlets did you have? When were you able to feel your feelings?
Right. I love that you asked that, because I'm a huge advocate for making sure that you feel your feelings, because even when you are a positive person and you're constantly trying to look at the bright side, you still, if you just bottle that up and push it to the side like it doesn't exist and you don't feel it at all, it could be a problem later on too. So I did take the time to feel my feelings, and most of that was at nighttime after the kids had gone to bed. I specifically remember just looking up at the moon through the sunroof and just praying to God, and praying my way out of the situation, but also asking him, what am I supposed to learn from this situation? What am I supposed to get out of this? And, sometimes even saying, what did I do wrong and why me? Like, we all have those moments when we're going through something where it's like, why me? Until we figure out, why not me? And we start to learn how we can better ourselves from the experience. But yeah, I definitely had those moments at night when the kids would go to bed, or in the shower when nobody can tell you're crying, kind of things, which I still do that. But, so yeah, that's very important. I'm glad you asked that.
I was going to ask, going through these changes, we also feel like the man is supposed to be the protector. In your situation, going through homelessness and the depression feelings, did your feelings change for your ex-husband?
See, there y'all go. Y'all diving deep. Okay, let's go there. So, yes, that's the short answer. Short answer is yes. I did have my moments where I felt like, bitterness building up where it's like, he's supposed to be doing this and I'm having to feel like I'm having to do everything. Like, and then there was times when I was trying to get assistance and I couldn't because they literally would turn me down because I was married. And they like, even the government expects that the man should be doing that. So you don't need our help. And it's like, but he's not doing it. So what do I do? So there was so many times where I had to lie and say I was single when I wasn't, just to get the assistance I needed. There was, there was a lot of instances like that to where it did build up some bitterness in me. And like I said, we went to Miami at one point. He had gotten multiple jobs. It's like pulling teeth, trying to, push to say, I had to kind of push to say, look, we're in this situation now. We got to do something to get out. So it was, both of us were working multiple jobs to get back on our feet and get back. But, that was just one of those lessons learned. I honestly feel like that question ties more into the divorce segment of the show because, I had to learn the hard way that vetting is a thing and you got to do that. And I did not do that the first time I got married or the second time really. But, if I had have done that, then I might not have been in that situation. And so, yeah, I feel like now looking back on it, a lot of times people will look at women like myself who are bosses, who are, heads of households and things like that, and say that that's why we can't be in relationships, or that's the reason for it, right? But I see it as, in my instance, and then a lot of people can relate, that I had to wear the pants because I had to. And I didn't necessarily want to, but I learned how to because I was in a situation where I had no choice to. So now it still kind of trickles into my everyday life and into relationships since that marriage was, if I see one instance of you can't handle this, I'm going to take it over because these things have to get done. And so if you're not going to do it, I'm not going to end up homeless again because of you. So there was a lot of things from that situation in that relationship that stuck with me to make me change my behaviors from then on out and recognize, like, when I see those red flags, I'm like, oh no, it will not be another situation like that. Because of that traumatic experience, it definitely caused some PTSD. That's the word I was searching for there. It definitely caused some homeless PTSD because now I'm like, I refuse to ever, and I was like that ever since then, to ever go through that again. I will not let anybody drag me through that or slow me down to where I could even come remotely close to experiencing that again. So, yeah.
Understood. Definitely understood. How long was it after you guys' homeless period to when you were just like this ain't cutting it no more, this is done? How long was that process? And just as a little add-on, were you feeling like that before you guys went into homelessness? Like, were we even creeping into that territory? And that just kind of exacerbated things?
The first question, I don't really know how long. It's really hard to pinpoint exact time periods when it comes to all of my story. And, I sat and wrote a book about it and was trying to really create a timeline and try to guesstimate how long of a period this was from this time to this time. So that's hard to answer. But the second part of your question, I would say, yeah, before ending up homeless, I definitely was that bitterness was already building, when you're, I'm just going to go be straight up. This is unfiltered, unspoken. Like, when you're dealing with a man child, it is not, it definitely was already building up. So before we ended up homeless, that I was just like, do you have any drive or passion whatsoever? And me being the driven, passionate person I am, it stands out even more when the person that you're with is just like, oh, I'm perfectly fine with sitting here watching TV or playing video games all day long. And you're just like, what? So that was already there. But again, I take responsibility for the fact that I did not vet this person properly. And that's what I was dealing with. So yeah, that bitterness was definitely already creeping up.
And I'm going to jump in and go right back there. how did it change the dynamics in your relationship? What kind of friction did it cause? The arguments? Was it in front of the kids? Could the kids see the tension between y'all?
That's a great question too, because one thing that I can say is I was very, very careful. Again, just protecting my kids from as much trauma as possible because I'd experienced enough from my lifetime and theirs. And so I was very careful that when there was arguments that we made sure that they were had away from the children or they were in a whisper yell or something, to where it was not affecting them. So that's another one of those questions that I asked them as adults, like, do y'all remember us ever arguing? Because there was plenty of arguments, but they don't remember any. They didn't have to experience, any domestic violence in the household, whether it yelling or physical. So I'm grateful for that, that was one thing that we were on the same page with was let's take this outside or somewhere else or have it quietly so that we can hash it out without it affecting them. So.
And what was it that you were doing, at the time of which you decided to divorce? How were you, supporting yourself at that time? And, what was kind of the next game plan for you, if you can remember?
I don't remember exactly what I was doing at the time of the divorce, but I know that throughout the homeless situation, I never wanted to like prior to then, I had already left my last day job. And by left, I mean, I was fired for a really ridiculous reason that was kind of confirmation for me that God did not want me on a day job, that I was supposed to be pursuing what I know I was created to do, which is in this what I'm doing in this entertainment field. So I had left the last day job and was not trying to go back to that. So, obviously going through the homeless situation, I picked up gigs here and there, but I was still auditioning. I was still, I think at one point I actually worked at a hotel front desk third shift so that we could be able to stay at the hotel. And so I would just look for opportunities that benefit us in other ways than just a small paycheck. It was like either, it provided a place to stay on occasion, like a hotel, or it provided food, like free food for the family or something, some benefit like that. So I would get little gigs here and there, but for the most part, I was still auditioning. And when I went to Miami, I had booked several gigs there. So I was still able to juggle focusing on the bigger picture and not completely setting my dreams aside, but also being able to fit in gigs when I was able to. And I had to do that by literally working 24/7. Like I was to the point where I did not sleep. I took power naps 20 minutes at a time between each shift. So you got first shift, 20-minute power nap, second shift, 20 minutes, and then a third shift and another 20-minute power nap. And it just went like that 24/7. So I was younger then. So, I can't do that as much now, but I still try sometimes. But yeah, so that's kind of how that went. So I can't remember exactly what I was doing at the time of the divorce, but I know I never gave up on what my passion was. I made sure that I was always doing that no matter what else I was fitting in there.
Okay. And then so going into that, I was going to, Sid, you had another question?
No, I just forgot I asked the last one.
Oh, okay. So going into that, what led up to the divorce where you just said, I've had enough? And was there friction going through the divorce?
Well, that question's easy, actually, because I talk about that in my show, 9 Lives. There was a moment that led up to it. So I was definitely one of those people that's like, I don't believe in divorce. I'm going to fight to the very end as much as I can. Unfortunately, it was to a fault to where I will carry us both on my back if I have to in order for us not to get divorced. And I had to learn the hard way that I can't do that. So I was trying to do that. And the only thing that would have ever been a cause for divorce for me was if it got physical, because I did experience the physical violence at a younger age, seeing my mother go through that. That was one of those things that in my head, I always felt like if it gets physically violent, I'm out of here, no questions asked. But if anything else happened, like if he cheated, if he, all these other things that you can think of, it's like, could I forgive him? maybe we could work through that and figure that out. Everything else seemed figure outable except for the physical violence for me. And so it had gotten to the point towards the end where we were constantly going back and forth, constantly arguing. I even tried like the separation thing and let's try to just, meet up to see the kids and stuff like that. And that wasn't working because it turned into he's going to call me to see the kids. And every single time it's really just to argue with me. So he never really wanted to see the kids. So it was one of those situations. And once I realized that, I had a moment. It was this very specific moment that I remember where we were arguing. Can't even remember what it was about, but I know what God was saying to me in that moment. And I was praying, like, as he's arguing at me, I'm not even listening to him at this point. We're standing outside, beautiful blue skies, if you can imagine, trying to paint the picture for y'all. And I'm looking up at the sky as he's sitting here arguing at me. And I'm saying in my mind, like, God, you're going to have to do something really drastic to get me out of the situation. Like, I don't feel like you would want me to get divorced. Like, that's wrong, right? And so if I'm supposed to get divorced, I just need you to give me a very clear sign to know this for a fact, because I'm going to still stay in this if you don't. And like literally in that moment, as I'm praying to God about it, a lunchbox actually came out of nowhere, and had hit me, and he had threw the lunchbox that he had in his hand at my face. And I don't even remember why, because I don't remember what we were arguing about or what he was even saying. I was just having this God moment in my mind, and it was just like, bam. And that's when I just was like, when it took me a second to like realize, did he just throw this at me? And so once it registered, I was just like, okay, thank you, God. And I think it kind of scared him, because it was like, people don't usually react like that to getting hit in the face. But I was like having this whole conversation, and I was just like, thank you, God. Okay, I got it now. I got you. And that's when I drew the line and said, okay, going through with the divorce no matter what at this point. And it's funny because my crazy self. So I actually ended up marrying the same person twice. So what had happened was I had that experience. I said, I'm getting divorced. I started going through the divorce. And then as we were going through the divorce, then it was one of those things where you start to get along again. And you're like, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe he can change. Maybe, how we women do. And so it was one of those. And then so by the time we were actually getting the divorce and I was kind of changing my mind, then he was like going through his stubborn phase where he's like, oh no, you wanted a divorce, so now we're getting a divorce. And so he followed through with it, even though I wasn't even wanting to sign the papers at that point. And so we had gotten the divorce. So by then we're back talking, and we ended up getting remarried, and that was very short-lived because I shouldn't have remarried him in the first place. So yeah, that was a whole ordeal in itself. But yeah, that's kind of how that went.
Now, what would you say, once you started going out on auditions and booking roles, what would you say was, one that you were most excited about, or you felt like you were most accomplished with starting off? Which one kind of let you kind of fueled you to keep it going? Like you were on the trajectory to the right place for this industry.
Yeah, that would have to be the reason I moved to Atlanta in the first place, which I moved to Atlanta to work with Tyler Perry. And so as soon as I got to Atlanta, I think it took me maybe 2 months to kind of get my foot in the door there. And so once I was working with him, just extra and just small little here and there parts, then there was just a moment where we were on set, and I realized that he knew who I was because he sat down in front of me and was like, hey, Vitelle. And I'm just like, huh? Like, this whole time I didn't think that he even noticed me because I'm just, don't have a major role here. So, so that was the moment that I'm like, okay, I must be doing something right. Definitely that moment.
Okay. I want to jump back real quick because I want to ask a question. It's a 2-in-1. Mm-hmm. You remarried your ex-husband. Mm-hmm. Did you have the same issues with him that you had before you divorced him? And why do you think that you remarried him?
Yeah, definitely. Because it really was just short-lived. It happened so quickly. I can't even remember the dates. It was like, we're divorced, but I was already ready to not get divorced. And then we're getting remarried immediately, and then we're getting divorced almost immediately again. So it was not that much time in between there. I don't remember anything actually changing. Um, so yeah. And what was the second part of that question?
Sorry. Why do you think that you remarried him again?
Oh, I mean, just because I felt I think I was beating myself up more than anything because of that. Where a lot of us are taught like divorce is bad. We're not supposed to do that. So I think it was more of that than anything, like, and me still thinking like I can still fix it, and I can, still having some hope uh there. And just, yeah, just mostly beating myself up like I wasn't supposed to get a divorce, but I knew that I was, because God had clearly showed me that sign when I when I experienced that day. So yeah, it was just being hopeful
Do
to a
you think
fault.
that was a part of your childhood traumas?
That's very possible. Yeah, I think more than anything, I think more than anything, just the fact that I felt guilty for getting a divorce in the first place. I felt like I had done something wrong.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, you did say that that significant moment for you, going back to Atlanta to work with Tyler Perry.
Mhm.
Touching that kind of star power there. What did you have any? I know sometimes when I just watch movies, I might have a burst of motivation, for something. What did it spark in you? Was there anything that immediately came to mind that you wanted to do, or what the next kind of goalpost was?
Um, I mean, nothing specific. I think just being on set with him in general and seeing how he operated, and feeling like I related so much to that. And a lot of us creatives, we feel very alone on this earth. So, our minds just work differently. So when I first experienced him, and it's like a lot of people would look at that and have something to say, like, oh, he's strict, he's mean, he's this, is that. And I didn't see it that way. I saw, and I'm like, he's focused, he's determined, he's creative. Like I could literally see his wheels turning, because I could see that that's how my mind works. And it just made me feel like at home, and like finally somebody who I can relate to, kind of thing there. So I hadn't really felt that prior to working with Tyler. And yeah, so I think that's, yeah. And like I said, just that sit down where he's like, knew my name and pronounced it right and everything, because everybody pronounces my name wrong the first time. So I was like, dang, he be talking about me, like, and I could just, like I said, I could just see his wheels turning when he was watching me. Several times I caught him watching me. It was like, oh gosh, but like I could see that he was like casting in his mind. I just related so much to that, and I was like, this is what I do, this is who I am, and I need to embrace that, and let that happen, and allow my life to level up to where I'm doing the things that I know I'm put on this earth to do.
And I want to ask, how was it working in the industry? We hear so many we hear more cons than pros, and you've been on different like avenues of it.
Mhm.
Do you feel as though working in the industry is stressful? Did it cause some
Mm.
depression? Um, yeah.
No, that's a lot of question right there. It definitely is very stressful. And I always advise people to make sure that it is your calling, it is your purpose, that you are truly passionate about it, because otherwise you're not going to make it. Like, just to keep it real on that part, like you're going to face a lot of rejection. You're going to get more no's than yeses. And so you just have to have a tough skin when it comes to that, and recognizing that no matter how many no's you get, if this is where you're supposed to be, and this is what you're made for, then that no isn't an insult to you. That no is a loss for them. Like, dang, I'm sorry you couldn't have me in your project while you had a chance. Like, you just have to have this confidence to where you have no doubt that this is where you're supposed to be, so that whatever comes against you, you're able to keep going and persevere no matter what. So you got the auditions, and then of course you got the public. The more you start getting known, the more you're gonna have to deal with that. And everybody's got something to say, and the bigger you are, the more people there are to have something negative to say. So you have to definitely have tough skin with that part too. So yeah, definitely the industry can be very depressing, and that's why you have a lot of celebrities that do end their lives and have alcohol and drug issues and stuff like that. So I don't recommend it for everyone. I recommend it for those who is their purpose to be in that industry.
Now, once you were at the point that you were divorced, probably had moved back to Atlanta, what with you and your boys or your kids, excuse me, I'm not sure if they're both boys, but okay. What or who was your support system? How did you, kind of manage? I'm sure, either being on set or auditions or all hours of whatever, and you got to be ready to go at any kind of point in time. So how was kind of juggling, both sets of responsibilities?
Man, that was probably the toughest part, really, because I didn't really have a support system. I didn't have much of one because I had moved, away from my family. I had moved to Atlanta actually prior to the divorce. So we moved to Atlanta together, and then became homeless in Atlanta, and then got divorced, and then he moved back to his hometown, and I stayed in Atlanta. But it was an extremely lonely process, because the support system that I ended up having is what I built with my, I call them family, my film family in Atlanta. So as far as like blood relatives, they all were in other states, and nobody was actually there with me. So I did have a godmother, that I self-proclaimed godmother, that I adopted, and a brother that lived in Atlanta. And so I would stay with them, and they would help me as well. So
That's good. Look, I tell you, family is not DNA.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I want to ask, because I know in the industry you'll probably get a lot of public criticism, people being judgmental. We see it all the time on social media with folks' comments.
Right.
How did you cope and deal with that? And while we have the audience, because people don't get to see the back scene of public figures,
Mhm.
how did you cope with being judged or negative remarks from the public?
Well, I'll be honest. When I started out, I was a people pleaser, and that is not a good person to be in this industry. So I did care a lot, and my feelings were hurt, and I responded to every comment and all of those things. That was something that I had to learn, like, not to sweat at all. So I just eventually got better and better at not caring. I think it was almost like a training grounds, and I even looked at even further back than that, and going into my childhood, how, being picked on in school and being talked about, and being like, not too many people liked me, and being bullied and things. You think like, that was kind of training grounds for where I'm going, because, God's trying to get me good and get me some tough skin and get me good at handling these things, because that's what I'm going to deal with. So there was a lot of times that I self-sabotaged, because when I started to feel like I'm getting too known or too famous or whatever you want to call it, like, I pulled back, because I did not like the negative feedback. I wanted people to like me. I didn't want everybody to be mad at me for every little thing I said and stuff like that. So I think just over time, I had to just develop the I don't really care. And that came through even my circumstances. Like, I know being homeless in itself really elevated me to the level of I don't care, because wasn't nobody paying my bills when I was living in my car. So they can't really say anything to me, So it was one of those situations where you look back on where was all these people that have an opinion now when I needed them, kind of thing. And so that helped me to be less of a people pleaser and work my way out of that. So I would say I'm just now within, I don't know, the past year or two, getting to the point where I really could care less what people think. Because, and it took me a long time to get to this point. So you care less and less over time. And then eventually you're just like, Do y'all pay my bills? No. And then realizing, how short life is, experiencing death in the family. And, once that kind of hits home for you, then it's like, dang, we're all gonna go one day and ain't nobody fitting in the coffin with me. So why should I care what any of these people think? So it was all of it was a combination of all of those things that really helped me get to this point now. So it was not easy, and it did not happen overnight, and I'm still just recently arriving there. So yeah, I would say if you're struggling with that, if you're somebody watching that's struggling with that, have grace, because we're all people. We care what people think, and especially if we're sensitive and we want people to love us and we're people pleasers, we just got to work our way out of that, because it's not the way to be. It will hold you back, and you'll find yourself being held back, and it's still can't none of these people pay your bills. So you're holding yourself back for nothing. So
What do you do what do you do, and what can you suggest, maybe for anyone trying to get into the industry, to kind of like keep yourself sharp, or to hone your skills? Do you think it's something that just you naturally have it, or you don't, or are there things that you can work on, to become a contender at these auditions?
Okay, so a combination of both, and some of my acting friends are not going to like my answer for this, but you asked it very specifically. I am one of those people that feel like you either have it or you don't in the beginning. Like you're either there's got to be something already there to build on. But I do believe in attending acting workshops and practicing and honing on your craft and just utilizing the skill, because it's like any other skill, singing or even arithmetics or whatever, any skill that you have, if you don't practice it or nurture it, it may just go away, or you just you want to try to improve upon it. But I definitely feel like you either have it or you don't. And this is coming from somebody, I used to teach acting workshops, and uh, I felt like at one point that I could make anybody good at this. But then I did experience people that was just like, yeah, this isn't going to happen, So I do feel like you got to have it or not. So if you already have something there, then you can build on that, and I recommend building up on that. And I've helped people with that before in the past. But if it's just not your gift, it's just like singing. Like there are people, y'all watch American Idol and all that. Like there's people that's just like, it doesn't matter how many voice lessons they take, if they can't sing, they just can't sing, So, but then there's people who, might not be the greatest singer, but can take voice lessons and build on it and get better. So I look at it like that. So yeah, a little bit of both of those.
And I want to ask, how did you mentally balance being a mom and working so much? Did your kids feel like they needed you more? Did you feel a guilt that you weren't there as much?
That's a great question, because I'm on tour right now, and I've actually been struggling with that a little bit lately because, I've been on tour since January, and I normally would get all of the kids together, all 8 of them that are spread out all over the place. I would get all of them together like, every other month or so. And then, since January, I just literally haven't been able to do anything but this tour. But I've popped in on them here and there, and intentionally spent time with each one individually. But I'm just feeling like right now I'm just going through withdrawals right now. I just miss having all the kids around, and I'm glad this tour is coming to a close right now because of that. But I have had some guilt with it lately. But at the same time, I have to reflect back on the mother that I have been, and looking at pictures and seeing like I've gone above and beyond the extra mile to make sure that not only do my kids not experience trauma or anything like it, so that they don't have to struggle with some of the things I struggle with, but also that I am very present, even though I'm very busy. Like, I just feel like instead of lacking in one area, I have to just step it up even more. So I have to operate at 1,000%, where somebody else might operate at 100%, because that extra percentage is making up for anything that the kids could possibly lack. So I make sure they go on all the vacations and the movies. And, just when I am going through that withdrawal and I'm realizing like, okay, it's been a minute since I really had some quality time with the kids, like I'll stop everything to do that. And I haven't really been able to do that as much during this tour. Like I've done pop-ups and let's go to the movies real quick or go out to eat or something like that's quick, but we're definitely due for a vacation right now. And so I have to just be intentional and planning things out. So just like right now, as soon as this tour is over, I'm going to take maybe 2 to 3 days just for myself to regroup and get my mental right so that I can be the best parent and go round up all the kids and we go on probably a month-long vacation because it's necessary right now to make up for lost time. So I'm just always, it's not easy and I can't really tell you, there's no real answer to how to balance this out, but the answer is you definitely have to try to find some balance and just be aware of where have I been lacking at. Let me give some more attention and energy to that area. And that's what I do when it comes to the parenting part of it.
If it has been, even a thought in your life after the 2 divorces, how, does your career choice affect dating? Do you feel like you have to kind of date within the industry just because they understand a little more, or do you prefer someone who is not? And, how does that kind of all forever traveling around kind of, affect something with one person?
Right. I'm laughing at Miss Confidence's reaction over here. She's over here like, yes, give us the tea. Give us the tea.
Yeah, we want to hear the tea.
Listen, first of all, I also was laughing because the first thing that came to my mind was Miss Brown when she said, ain't nobody got time for that. So that's literally, I saw her face when you said that. So that is kind of how I feel in the forefront is like, I really don't have time. And I've turned down and rejected plenty of people because I just don't got time. And honestly, I just feel like anybody who's for me would understand and recognize that ain't nobody got time. So they would probably not have much time either. Like I've already created this person in my mind that just don't have time for me and I love him already. So, like it's a weird scenario right now, but I'm so focused and determined, and the people that I do have in my life, as far as friendships, they give me so much love, and I'm loving my team is amazing that I have Us Three Productions, and they love me so much. Like I don't feel like I'm lacking anything, and so if someone was to come along, they would have to really really step their game up because it's gonna be hard to convince me. I'll tell you that. I know how to spot the red flags now. There are a lot of unhealthy people walking around on this planet, and I've done so much healing that I would be a fool to deal with somebody or get in a relationship with somebody who has not done at least equally as much healing, if not more, than myself, to get themselves together. And, there's no perfect person, but I believe that perfect people are people who recognize that they're not perfect and they have been very intentional on working on themselves and are very self-aware, and that's the best you can ask for. So I don't intend to devote any time to that anytime soon. But if that person came along, then I'm sure I would recognize them if it happened. So, but yeah, it's hard to believe that type of person exists because my standards are very high right now. My standards are all the way up here. I'm like, honey, you are not impressing me at all. So
I love it. I want to ask, since you said there's a lot of healing, and there's a piece that I don't want to leave out because we had it in the description. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about a little bit about your feelings or attempts of suicide, because there's a lot of healing from that. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of people struggling, especially during this time, that are suicidal, that don't know what direction they're going in. And what was your triggers to make you feel suicidal, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, that was a lot in one question. I'm gonna see if I can pinpoint on all this because wow, there's so many different parts to that. So looking back on the times that I was suicidal, and my TikTok BTS is probably going to cut me off because they be picking up on certain words. But I would I was in a relationship at the time when I was severely suicidal. And that was the time in my life where I had to recognize, as an empath, for those who may be able to relate, I had to recognize how much of that was me and how much of that was a spirit that I was picking up from the person that I was sleeping with. So a lot of that came from the person that I was intimate with at that time. So, and I didn't know it until after it was over and I was able to go through my healing and distance myself and things like that. But, and I'm not saying all of it, but a lot of it was elevated because of the relationship that I was in. So I say that to say, you know, it's so important that we are careful of who we are intimate with and all of those things, because it definitely affects us on a spiritual and mental level. And so, you know, when it came to being suicidal, I think there was just so much struggle and so much trauma that I'd had to overcome, and so much why me. And I don't want to say it was a pity party, because honestly, I give that person that I was grace, because she had been through a lot and it was perfectly normal for her to feel that way at that time, because I'd gone through so much. And I think you just reach the point where you're just like, I am so tired of just being here. And so, you know, that's just where I was at that time. But I had to also, I was dealing with some self-esteem issues. I'll say that as well. So I had to learn to love myself all over again, or for the first time really in my life. So learning how to love myself, learning how to protect who I allow in my life and how I let others treat me, because now I'm loving myself. So if you're not loving me the right way, I have to check that. And I notice that faster because I'm learning to love myself better. Like, all of that was a combination of getting me out of there. But I definitely had those severe moments where I was just at the end of the rope. And, you know, I'm trying to be careful a little bit. I know it's unfiltered, unspoken, but I already got a one morning.
Oh, you did. I was about to say it how you want to say it.
One morning, but you know, I'm trying to.
I was about to say, can you pause it real quick?
No, it's all good. No, I'm gonna keep going. I don't want to, you know, I'm not going to be too detailed, and I don't want to be too detailed in my attempts, because I also have to be careful in this area. You know, trigger warning for everybody. If someone is feeling that way, I don't want to be the one to give them an idea of how to do it. You know what I mean? But I can say that I had thoroughly thought through different ways to leave this earth. And so, you know, just being careful in how I say that. But it was just a matter of getting my relationship with God right, and getting my own love for self together, and then learning how to change the circle of people that I have around me, including relationships, including friendships, even family, cutting people off. That is so important, setting those boundaries, because so much of who we're around is affecting who we are and how we think as well. So that was, you know, a lot. I could say a lot of my life I was experiencing those emotions, and the depression and all of those things. But I can look back on it now and see that slowly but surely I did all these different things to overcome that and to heal from that. And that's not to say that I'm never going to be depressed again. I'm never going to have those moments, but I see them for what they are now. And it's just moments. I'm feeling this way because this happened. I have the right to feel this way. And now how am I going to handle it? I'm never going to take my life. I'm never going to even have those thoughts again. But there are sad moments where I have to say, okay, this is how I'm going to choose to handle this in a healthy way. I'm going to journal. I'm going to pray. I'm going to listen to music. I'm going to dance. I'm going to have a girls' night out. Like, what do I need right now while I'm feeling like this to help me not feel like this anymore? So a lot of times it is a very, I don't want to say basic solution, but there's usually a solution there. There's usually a reason for it if you just are self-aware and evaluate yourself and why you're feeling this way. And there's usually a solution. And a lot of times it is getting away from whoever or whatever it is, changing your environment. All of those things can contribute to you not feeling that way anymore, and just reminding yourself of your purpose and your passion and your reason, and having a will to live. and just tapping into that and doing more of that makes you feel good and that keeps you feeling whole and healthy and happy. So that's how I answer that question. I hope I answered all the parts of that question.
Oh, you good? You did.
And can you give us a little synopsis about the tour you're on now, which show it is, kind of how it all came to fruition, and just your experience, creating and seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. So the Nine Lives World Tour right here. We are on the grand finale right now. It was a 9-city tour at the top of the year. 2025 kicked off the world tour of Nine Lives, which I'd already done previously, probably more than 20 times upon request. But this was the first time that I had said 9 cities, nine different dates. This is what we're going to do. We're doing this. We're sticking to it. And now we're on the grand finale coming up this weekend. So I'm really excited about that. But the show is a one-woman show about healing from trauma. I'm telling my own story, my own testimony, some of which you guys heard here on this live. And I'm detailing it through all of these different characters. So all of these different characters that you see here, I'm actually playing every one of them. It's part film, it's part live performance, and each of them touches on a different topic that we've spoke on tonight, a different part of my life that I have experienced, and they all tell their side of the story, which is my life. So that is what the Nine Lives World Tour is. It's a whole experience. When we come into the cities, we connect with organizations in the community that help in these areas, whether you're talking about mental health, human trafficking, even homelessness, as well as domestic violence. So those are the main 4 topics that we cover in this show. And we connect with those organizations in the community that deal with those and help people to overcome and heal and get out of and all of these things. And we bring them to the show. So when you come to the show, you get to experience this part movie, part play, but you also get to connect with vendors and organizations that are going to be able to help you. If you see yourself in this show, if you can relate to the characters in any way, and you find that there may be something there that I need to work on or continue to heal from that I've gone through, then you're able to connect with them to get that continued healing. So the Nine Lives World Tour is a whole movement. And even though we are coming to the 2025 grand finale close, it is just the beginning of what this movement is going to continue to do worldwide for the future. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
A lot of people are not able to look at the reflection in the mirror, and I've seen the play, so it's awesome. And do you consider it a play or a production? How do you?
Actually, that word offends me a little bit. Yeah, so we never really call it a play because it just makes you think of like a church play or like a I don't know. This is an experience, and we've started calling it an experience in general, or just a show, if we just say a show, because it's part film and part live performance, but it's also like music and dance and this whole you got to be there to see it. So we just call it a show or an experience.
Okay. So I was going to ask, this is a reflection in the mirror. Mm-hmm. How did you feel looking at yourself? And reflecting on yourself, does it bring back triggers? Does it bring back grief? What emotions do you have facing yourself?
So the emotions that my response to Nine Lives has changed over time. So when we first started this, it's been years since I started in 2020, right? So when I first started it, it was very triggering. It was a lot of healing still had to be done. And I went through that healing process through doing this show actually helped me to elevate my healing even faster. So now the way I look at it, so over all this time, just healing more and more each time. And then now seeing what it's doing for so many other people. Now my focus is so on the other people. I can't even see myself in the show anymore, even though it's my experiences and I remember it. Like I'm so focused on making sure that everything's in order and the whole show flows right for the people that are in attendance, because each and every audience is completely different. And and I look at all of them like they need this show. And I don't know who out there might be struggling with depression or suicide or anything that's going on in their life or in a domestic violence relationship that they need to get out of before it's too late. Like, we always look at this show like it's life or death, and we have to do it. We have to do it right. We have to be careful with it. Like, it's a delicate situation. And so I don't often get a chance to really stop when the video is playing and I'm back behind the scenes doing all the stuff. I don't always stop and just watch it. But I think this last show, actually, I stopped and watched it a little bit more than usual. And I'm just like, I'll be watching it like it's somebody else. Like, I don't like the actress in this show is so good. It's me, y'all. Spoiler alert. But yeah, like, I play all these different characters and I'm like watching them on the screen like it's somebody different, because they are so different. And ever since we got them printed out on these life-size boards that we now have, if you've been following the tour, you already know this, but they just feel like completely separate people from me ever since then. So I can call them by name now, and they don't even feel like me, even though I know those are my life experiences. So that's kind of a funny realization that I had at this last show. And the characters are so different that they literally, people will come up to me after and say, were you even in the show? Like, was that you? Every one of those was you? Like, they still don't believe it even after they've watched it. So that's how different the personalities and the accents and the body language and just everything about these characters is not even me. And honestly, I don't feel like I can take credit for much of this show. Like, God did that. So when I'm watching it, I don't feel like, wow, I did that. Like, there's never really a moment where I feel like, dang, I did that. It's always like, dang, God, this is good, because I really can't believe, that it's played out the way it has. And it's just amazing to me every single time.
You on mute.
Again, look, we're almost at time. We'd like to close out from life experiences. Through your life experience, from your life experience, what advice can you give from your life experience for someone, a female, because we're on the topic, we're talking about you, that is going through domestic violence or in a relationship where a man is bringing them down, you're going through stress, you're having thoughts. What advice would you give them to make a change in their situation?
Run, girl, run. No, I'm just no, but for real though, just get out. Like, don't even, like, I can't even. No, but for real, like, it's like you see all the time in the news. I just went on Instagram the other day and seen a situation like this. Like, you see it every time you turn around, where there's just this happy couple, and the next thing you know, one of their lives is over because the other one was violent. You don't want to be that person. And every single person who goes through that, whether it's, the mother of the person or the person themselves or whoever's involved in one of those situations when they happen, it's like they never thought it would happen to them. They never expected it, or they never thought it would happen to their child or whoever. Like, that's why with this show I mentioned earlier, we take it so seriously, because nobody ever thinks it's going to be them. So you have to be able to see those red flags and take it seriously, and, have a discussion about it. And if it doesn't seem like something that's going to be able to be reconciled, like, all I can say is just take it seriously, because you don't know when that could end up being you on the news, and you don't want to take that chance. You don't want to risk your life for your kids. I think a lot of us stay in relationships for the kids, thinking that was another reason that I stayed in mine for so long, was thinking, well, they need both their parents and they need, this and that. Sometimes parents are just better parents separate from each other. Sometimes that's the best thing for the parents, is to be separate and to be even more present for that child. So recognizing that it's going to hurt the child more to see their family hurt, or their mother, or I can't even say mother, because sometimes it's the woman that's the abuser, and it's the man that's under attack. So, whatever the situation is, just take it seriously, get out while you can, and don't feel like, oh, that would never happen to me, because everybody who it's ever happened to thought the same thing. So that's all I can say about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here with us this evening. As we always do, we like to give you the chance to promote yourself, anything you want to draw attention to, anything you have for sale, anything. You have the floor. You can let our viewers know how to contact you or utilize those services.
Sure. So you guys make sure to follow and connect with me. Like I said, we are on the grand finale, the last of the 9 Lives World Tour. So if you are anywhere near Bowling Green, or even if you're not, because people are flying in from all over the place for this show, but Bowling Green is your last opportunity to see this show on stage, live in living color. So make sure you guys get tickets on Eventbrite. Also, you can go to my website, vitelle.net. That's vitelle.net. Go to vitelle.net. You can subscribe right there through your email to stay in the loop with what we have going on, and even get casting and audition information, know about the next shows when they come to your city, and all of those things, as well as get tickets on that site. And you can get a copy of my book, which this show is based on. It's called I Am a Poetic Ensemble. You guys can get a copy of that there on the website as well. And you'll link to all my social media. Everything's right there at vitelle.net. So go check it out.
Yep, go check her out. You don't want to miss. We want to thank you for being a guest again on Unfiltered Unspoken. Sorry, our questions are what they are,
I be getting up on folks in here. I'm trying to tell you, like,
yeah. We love it too. We love that we've made this comfortable for any guest, and we want to thank you for sharing your testimony, because there's still more. We still didn't cover everything, because as they said, you got 9 lives.
I know, right? We're gonna need 9 episodes.
Right, exactly. But we want to thank you so much for tuning in. And I have one more question. Do you feel like you made a milestone when you were able to be a part of Tyler Perry?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Cause like I said, it was a goal. It's like you set the goal, you accomplished it. It's like, yeah, I came, I saw, I conquered. And so I just felt like moving on up in the world now.
Okay. I love it. So we want to thank everyone for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast, where we are going to continue to share life experiences. We have so many wonderful testimonies and experiences. Please come check Vitelle's episode, her first one out, which I believe is episode 19, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, check her out. She just has such a testimony to share. This is the woman that has been through human trafficking, domestic violence, suicidal thoughts, maybe attempts. We didn't get there. Attempts, homelessness, depression, divorce. So she just has so many pieces and areas that she taps into. And there are so many women and men that are going through these situations now, and the rate of people, especially suicide, is up. So depression can lead to suicide. So please don't ignore it. Look at it, face it, and get help for it.
That's right.
See it. We'll keep sharing them life experiences, right?
That's right.
That's right. Peace.
Yeah.
I'll tell if you could stay for a second.
Okay.